Welcome to Head On. I'm Paul Winn, filling in for Hillary Eastmira. And today we have a very interesting subject for discussion, the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Society. And with me today is the Executive Director, Mr. Jim Spinelli.
Hi, Paul.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, it's our pleasure. And I know that the people in Nanaimo are going to be interested in discovering this little pearl of organization in our society that provides, affordable housing for individuals. And I wouldn't mind if you could tell me a little bit about how the society started.
Well, we're just about to reach our 25th anniversary as a society. I haven't been there quite that long, but 18 years I've been with Nanaimo Affordable Housing. But it was started, as most organizations, community organizations do, by a group of concerned people in the community. At the time, there was no housing for low-income singles in Nanaimo, and they were successful at bringing the first singles project to Nanaimo. It was mostly, I believe, most of the individuals who were involved in the setup of the organization were with Brecon United Church. But they worked with the city to lobby the city to provide some property to build, and lobbied the provincial government to get some money to build some housing. And that's how the organization started. And I was hired initially to manage the first singles building, but eventually took over management of the second complex that the society operated, and now we're about to open our sixth early in 2016.
Well, that's really interesting, because housing is a big issue, as you know, everywhere in most municipalities, and anytime you get an opportunity to provide affordable housing for people, and because the homeless, you got a lot of homeless problems in other communities. But I was going to ask you about the funding sources. This must take a lot of financial resources.
It does. To operate subsidized housing and to house people that are at the bottom end of the economic scale, you really need to have government participation. Most of our funding is through the province. There has been some cost-sharing agreements so that the federal government has some involvement, but we've seen their role in housing decrease over the last many years. But the province of British Columbia has continued to put money into building housing over the years. And our goal is to be ready so that whenever government says we're going to make some money available to build some housing, that we're ready to try to build some more housing in our community, because the need is so great.
Yeah, funds are always an issue in these kinds of things. And I was going to ask you about what are sort of the kinds of individuals that you have to provide housing for?
Well, we have a broad spectrum of housing in our portfolio right now. We started out, actually the first project that the society got before I started was a small family housing complex, so 17 townhouses for low-income families. You have to have dependent children to live there. We then opened the singles building for singles. Now, we have focused principally on people with disabilities. So everybody that lives in our buildings, singles buildings, are living with some kind of a permanent disability. Could be a physical disability, could be mental challenges, could be a mental health issue, but all of them are on a limited income. So they get $375 a month from the province for housing. There's not too many places that they can live other than our buildings. We charge $350 a month rent so that they can get a telephone as well. So we have 3 buildings that house singles. Last year, we acquired a seniors housing complex from the General George R. Perks Society, who decided they wanted to close down operation, wanted to make sure that the housing continued and was well managed and stayed affordable. So they approached us to take over operations, and we did that last October of the General George R. Perks complex on Butter Tubs. And we're just now in construction on a project that's focused more on street homeless, although it's a very interesting project. We'll get a chance to talk about it a little bit later, because I have 2 partners in that program, both the Vancouver Island Mental Health Society and Haven Society, which is the transition house for women fleeing violence.
Oh, so that's from the point of view of the kinds of people who are in need of housing, that's an ideal situation. Right. Because if I compare it to other Oregon and other cities where they have single room occupancy kind of facilities, they're you hear a lot of complaints where individuals have to, they get a single room and then they have to share a washroom down the hall or some other such thing.
And
or
some
just,
of them are not in very good shape.
no,
as well.
or they
Right.
have a hot plate in the room. Seems your facilities seem to be really what I would call at the top end of the kind of.
They're all independent living. They're all, for the singles, one-bedroom apartments, although in the new project, they're going to be bachelors, but they're 385 square feet, but they're quite nicely designed to give people a lot of room and flexibility. Our singles complexes are all one bedrooms. The family housing complex, we have 2-bedroom, 3 bedrooms, and 1 4-bedroom unit. So they vary in size. And the seniors are bachelors in 1 bedroom. So it's a mix, but they all have full kitchens, full baths, and set up for independent living.
So then these individuals, they're responsible for the maintenance of the inside of their
Absolutely.
facility. So they do the
Yes,
cleaning.
we don't do any care. We don't provide any of those kind of services. We do have in some of our complexes where we have people with disabilities, we do have support workers at a couple, 2 of our buildings. And our seniors complex that we took over actually has a supportive component. So there's housekeeping services and a meal service as well. So that's been different for us because we never had that before. I went from having 3 staff to 13 when we took over the seniors complex.
Whoa. How many people do you service then?
By the end, when we open, by the time our new project is open next February, we'll have 200 units in Nanaimo. Good size for a small community.
Yes.
Pacifica Housing from Victoria has about the same number of units in Nanaimo, but they were the first group. They were around before Nanaimo Affordable Housing and built mostly family housing. So they have a lot of family housing units in the community. We are much more, we have a broader spectrum, but organizations in urban areas are much larger. Pacifica Housing, as an example, has 25 complexes. We're working on our 6th.
Yeah.
Macola Housing, that does off-reserve housing for First Nations, has 1,600 units around the province. So there's actually 40,000 units of subsidized housing in British Columbia. And there's 600 organizations that run, nonprofit organizations that run housing.
So the only restriction then is income. Income. So
we house people that can't afford to live in market housing, basically.
Right. Well, that's kind of crucial, I think. Because as I was mentioning earlier, when you get down to the homeless, you see other cities struggling, and a lot of conflict between the municipality and individuals like that who obviously need places to live. But
our newest complex is part of the homelessness strategy, the homelessness provincial homelessness strategy. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, the province signed an agreement with the city of Nanaimo to provide 160 units to the community. They've taken a while to roll out. We're the last project, and we'll be open in 2016. So it's taken 8 years to roll out all those units.
Whoa.
But a number of different organizations are running projects. Canadian Mental Health Association, Pacifica, Tillicum Friendship Center has a small project down on 10th Street. They were all part of that same initiative.
Okay, so but like you say, it's taken 8 years. Boy, sometimes good things take a long time to come to fruition.
I've learned to be very patient in this job.
Yeah. Well, I would think so. Well, okay, who sort of manages the sort of the administrative side, not your level, but the board level? What kind of people?
Well, I have a pretty diverse board. We still have actually some of the original founding members, although they're ending their terms because we established term limits a few years ago that are going off the board this year. So they've been supporting the society for 25 years. But I have mostly people with a social background, but not entirely. We have some retired ministers. I have a retired social worker, but I do have a human resources specialist. I have a person with a real estate background, 2 people with real estate backgrounds actually now on the board. And we have some new people coming on in this year, a financial advisor, because as we grow, we need to find people with a little more experience. We have a real estate lawyer coming onto our board, so it's going to be quite interesting. But it's all people from the community who really support the work that the organization does. And that's the #1 job of the board, is to support the organization. We've been lucky. We've had some very committed people from the community that have worked hard to make sure that we're still around. I do the administration work, but the board is a very important component of all nonprofit organizations. And keeping your board strong and having a good succession plan for your board is really important. So we, That's okay.
Are they the ones who sort of deal with the province and
well, no,
the
actually, I do all
municipality?
that. The board really is I like to call it a community board. Their role is oversight,
Right.
and that's the role that boards. It's a governance board, so they
Okay.
don't involve themselves in day-to-day operations. That's my responsibility. I have all make human resource decisions for the organization, expenditure decisions. I have limitations, executive limitations, how much I can approve before I go to the board, particularly for capital things. I let my board sign my $9 million mortgage on my new project as opposed to me signing it.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. But, you know, that's really their role is oversight and to be the eyes and ears. I like to think of my board as the eyes and ears of the association in the broader community because they have their own social spheres and they hear people talk about housing and they can tell them about the good work that we do. They can hear if there's any issues in the community, and we have a pretty good reputation in the community. We know that, but that's what I look to my board for and to advise me. And they're also my boss.
Okay.
Right? So I work for the board of directors. That's their one job really, is to be my boss. And I run the rest of the organization.
But you also have a lot of members, who are not board members.
We do. We have a small membership. It's not huge because different from many organizations, we don't do a lot of fundraising. We don't have to because we're well funded provincially because it has to be in the housing sector. But we have about 35 members. It's been pretty constant since I've started. There's turnover,
Sure.
People go off, people come on for different lengths of time, depending on their circumstances and where they're at and how much time they're prepared to give. But they're a pretty good group. And it's the same kind of mix as people that have a lot of community background and a lot of connection to community and other community organizations, church organizations, health professionals, people like that would all be potentially members.
And any from your actual tenants?
No, actually, we don't allow tenants to be members. There's actually a reason for that. We actually feel it's a bit of a conflict of interest because we are landlords,
Right.
and we actually sign legal agreements with all of our tenants. So it would be like a tenant evicting themselves if they were actually a member of the society. So we actually don't allow our tenants to be members of the society because we think it's not really a good place to be. We actually had a board years ago when I was first starting. The board tried that. It actually two of the people that came on as tenants within a year had lost their housing because
Well, it makes sense
the
not to
pressure
do
was
that.
too much. Yeah.
It makes sense not to do that, but I was thinking, I guess in my mind it was sort of, is there any like a tenants committee or something that can bring their issues or feelings and concerns to you?
All of our process, we have a totally open door policy, so tenants can approach us anytime. We don't actually have active committees. Some of my complexes don't have the availability to do that. My family housing complex has a common room that maybe 2 people can sit in, so can't really have even a meeting with the tenants. But what we do and have committed to by the society in terms of our goals and our mission is to create community for people. So we're very active with our tenants. We spend time with the tenants. We make sure that they have opportunities to come together as tenants. We think that's a way better role, and we found that doing that, we've helped people to maintain their housing for a longer period of time. We give people a lot of ownership in the building. Some of my buildings, the tenants do the custodial work, because it gives them ownership in the building that they live in. And we hire them to do the custodial work as opposed to hiring somebody external when we can, to give them a little pocket money. So there's some things like that we do that help people to feel that they're part of something. Doesn't mean we never have any problems. No. We're landlords like everybody else. We have people that sometimes stop paying their rent or people that behave badly, and we have to deal with that. But in general, our goal is to keep people housed, not to help them lose their housing, but is to help them keep it.
That was a thing that I was thinking was about is there a large turnover in terms of people, coming and going, or do you have tenants who are long-term?
Both.
Okay.
Again. Our singles housing, we turn over very few units because everybody's on a fixed income. Yeah. And where are they going to go? Right? Once they get a place that they can afford and that's affordable on their income, they're going to stay. So we turn over units very slowly. Either someone gets ill, someone maybe for some reason moves out of the community. Our housing is for singles, not couples, so often somebody will find a partner and then they will move into market housing. Family housing, there's more turnover. We've turned over my family housing complex about 6 times in 7 years in terms of the units. So the average stay is about 4. Sometimes we have people that stay 10, sometimes 2. Again, circumstances change. We've had a lot of single parent families come into our housing complex. They go to the VIU, get some training, get a job. No reason for them to live in social housing anymore. They move on to market housing. A unit becomes available for somebody else.
I mean, when I look at the structure of NAHS, I think of it's like a little jewel in the middle of this community where housing, as I said, is particularly the cost of housing. It isn't as bad in Nanaimo as it is in the Lower Mainland when you hear about people paying $3 million for the land and then they got to put a house on it. Yeah, so it's a little different story. It seems like Nanaimo is showing a real concern for its citizens who need housing and can't afford it at market price.
There's been, for a small community, we have a good share. We have a good spectrum of family housing. There's actually 10 family housing complexes. 3 are First Nations only, but there's 7 other complexes in the community. There's 15 subsidized seniors complexes. So we've actually done well, and there's about 10 organizations that run housing in Nanaimo. So we are only one, but we're probably the largest now in Nanaimo in terms of number of units. And we have a broader spectrum. Many are focused. Some are just seniors housing. Some just do family housing. Some just do First Nations housing, as an example, where we have a more varied target group.
Is there going to have to be a different structure for your newer units when you're talking about you're sharing now with another organization?
The structure is going to be a little bit different. One of the reasons we partnered on this project is because it's a supported housing project with staffing 24 hours a day. And at the time we put this proposal in, which was in 2011, I was too small. And so I partnered with particularly Vancouver Island Mental Health Society, who already operate at 24-hour basis. They're unionized. So they're actually going to be doing the staffing. Right, and then the partnership with Haven, we actually were hoping to do a separate project with them, but weren't approved for the second project, so we decided to combine the projects. So one floor in our new building is going to be women only, and it'll be women coming through Haven's system, single women who are fleeing violence. Haven is going to put an extra layer of support outside of the building supports for the women on that floor. Our role will be landlord. We maintain the building. The building belongs to Nanaimo Affordable Housing. We maintain it. We're the landlord. We'll sign the landlord tenancy agreement, but the staffing is being done by those other organizations.
Oh, so it's going to be a good symbiotic kind of.
Oh, I think it's quite an exciting project.
Because I was interested in, one of the things I was interested in specifically about the new building was the fact that there's going to be a place for women who are, like you say, fleeing violence, because that's another, big social problem we have around. And do you know how many units will be available for these?
Yeah, there's 3 floors of units. There's 14 on the 2 floors top, and that doesn't mean there won't be any women in the top 2 floors, but the focus of the second floor is the women fleeing violence. There's only 13 units on that floor because we gave a separate common room. So there's an area, so if the women want to do things on their own, like have a meal together, it's got a full kitchen in the common room, and it's a big enough place that they can sit all together and have dinner together. And so it's a bit of a social space. Their laundry room is right there. So we've created kind of a separate space for the women so that if they want to be by themselves, they can. If they want to join the full community, they're also welcome to come down to join any activity that's going on that's being offered for the whole building.
It is, and having the sort of in-house personnel to take care of some of their issues and things, that's really got to be quite.
Well, how we view supportive housing, we don't do care. It's really, people who aren't doing well or have a psychiatric disability and a little bit disordered thinking sometimes, need some direction sometimes, need to be calmed down if they get agitated. We can help with that. We can get them to services. One of the benefits of having staffed housing is that you see the tenants every day. So if they're not doing well, we can get them to someone very quickly. So it's an early intervention model. That's how we talk about it, but it really works very well. We've been able to keep tenants very stable in our 2 current supportive housing projects. We've had people that had, before they came into our building, 5 times a year would be hospitalized that haven't been hospitalized now in 15 years. Because they're staying stable, because they're in the right living environment. And we learned years ago when I first came to town, that 75% of the emergency calls that mental health was getting from their clients were housing issues.
Whoa. But see, the structure that you have strikes me as being really concerned about the individuals who are using the facilities. You know, they're not just ratepayers or renters. You know, I mean, they say that you're concerned about their day-to-day involvement, their health, their mental and physical health, and well-being, and that's different than most housing
things. We like
things
to think
I've seen.
that we're very tenant-focused. Actually, I think most nonprofits, I will say, that run housing are that way. I have a lot of colleagues around the province that I know that they are very tenant-focused. Not all, but most, and that's good. As I say, there's 600 organizations that run that, and most are very good and very caring organizations. But it does run everywhere from, now they've built some complexes in Vancouver for homeless that have 140 units in it, to an organization that's running 10 seniors housing units in Valemount, British Columbia. So anyway, we do stay tenant-centered, and it is because our goal is to keep people housed, as I say, and we think we're pretty successful at that, at giving people a really nice place to live.
Oh, good. Well, you know, we've sort of run out of our time here today. But yeah, I know. There's so much more that I wanted to ask you, but maybe for another time we can do that. And listen, we've been talking to Jim Spinelli, the Executive Director of the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Society, and he's just filled me with all kinds of information about the wonderful things the society is doing to help people who are less fortunate than others in finding housing in the Nanaimo community.